Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Stoic Salon podcast, where we talk about life, love, work, play, the universe, and Stoicism. And today I'm really excited because I get to speak with Rocio de Torres Artillo. And Rocio is really interesting and unlikely Stoic, it seems to me. She's a digital product designer and a multidisciplinary artist. If you followed modern Stoicism for a while, you have already seen some of her work. She designs some of the posters and banners that you see on the modern Stoicism website, etc., and at the conferences. What interested me when I first read about her was that she completed an MA in, I'm just looking at her CV here, she completed an MA in communication design, and one of her projects was a project called Stoicable, and she created a whole lot of objects and branded kind of designs that considered and interrogated how to communicate Stoic philosophy to a broader public. And I'm going to be asking her about that during our conversation. She is so interested in all things design, but also literature, painting, songwriting, and she focuses on bringing philosophy closer to daily life. And she just loves sharing tales with meaningful narratives, and Stoicism is one of the narratives that informs a lot of her work. I asked her about her Stoic practice because she'll also be appearing and speaking with me on creativity at the inaugural Women's Conference on Stoicism, Practical Paths to Flourishing, which is taking place online on June the 5th this year for the first time. And Rocio said that she used to be afraid of flying, but she needed to do that, every few months for her work. So she had to find a way to deal with it. And she says that through her Stoic practice, she began exercising calm and being calm when, stepping onto a plane. And she would say to herself that it's an opportunity. So she'd see the fearful activity as an opportunity. And that made all the difference for her. So we're going to talk a bit about that too. And many more things, I hope. So, yeah, maybe it's time to get started. So, yeah, I get to speak to you, Rocio, and thank you so much for joining me. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
And we've just been talking about the weather, and I'm always talking about the weather. I think that people should come to Scotland for a Stoic boot camp, because the weather's really wet and cold, but it's going to be nice for all of us today, I think. So kind of a nice day for a conversation.
Yeah.
I can hear your dogs in the background.
Yeah, they are in the garden right now.
Are they in the garden?
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. I bet they're going to have a great day out there.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, as I was saying, I've just kind of started this podcast because I was really interested in talking with all these amazing women that, some of them, like you, are going to be at the Women's Conference, the first ever Women's Conference, June 5 on Saturday. And I was just thinking how interesting it would be to talk to women, because we don't get to hear women much in Stoicism, but there's definitely a lot out there, and there's you. I finally get to meet you. And what I've been asking everyone is kind of a question about their paths to flourishing through Stoicism. And of course, that ties in with the theme of the conference. So I wanted to ask you, what's your path? What led you to Stoicism? What was life like before Stoicism? And when you found out about Stoicism, when you encountered it, what was it like? Did someone give you a book? Did someone say, listen to this or do that? What happened? Was it instant love at first sight, or was it something else? And then a bit about life, now after Stoicism, and then we'll just go from there. How does that sound?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. So, I've been interested in philosophy in general since I was a teenager. and I started reading like Plato and all the big ones, but I didn't have any clue about Stoicism. Like I didn't hear the word Stoicism. It's not one of those philosophies that you learn at the beginning, right? And because also I didn't study philosophy or anything like that, so it was just self-learning, right? But then, so when I went to London, I did an MA in communication design, and I wanted to find a meaningful topic. So I wanted to connect, communication design or visual design with philosophy somehow. So I started researching more and going deep into all of that. Also, at that point, I found out about this book. It was called The Consolations of Philosophy from Alain de Botton.
Alain de Botton. Oh,
yeah, and that was very inspiring to me. He mentioned a few different philosophers. He mentioned one of the chapters about Seneca. Yeah. So from there, I started being very interested in this philosopher, and then I read another book that led me also towards Stoicism, which is as a Spanish writer. She's Mónica Caballé.
And how do you spell her surname?
Caballé is Cavalle.
Okay, I have to look her up. Wow.
Yeah, she's a very interesting philosopher. She thinks very well. She has a very interesting view on Stoicism. So I read her book. Well, in English, I don't know the name. It's I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know how to say in English. But it was a book in where she it's like the recover wisdom, something like that. I'm doing the translation literally. Yeah. I don't know if that's the.
What is it in Spanish?
La sabiduría recobrada.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and she makes Stoicism with other philosophies, like Oriental philosophies, So this book was recommended by my uncle to me. He is a writer, and he inspires me a lot on these kind of things. So from there, I started seeing, okay, this is like the kind of practical philosophy that I'm looking for, where I can, match my knowledge in communication design with something meaningful that can, I don't know if help people or, do something that is not only on the field of visual design, like do something that it's outside of that, graphic design community. So I started reading and learning about this. And also, while I was studying for my MA and learning more stuff about Stoicism, I was beating my own fears, right? And I was like, kind of, it helped me do the symposium, talking in front of a lot of people. Even, it was a challenge to explain this to people. And at the same time, it was something that was helping me out to be able to explain better, or to be able to just, be less shy or be more confident. It was an amazing transformation for me to find this philosophy. And I was so amazed that I didn't know about this before. Of course, I knew a little bit about Seneca or, Marcus Aurelius, but, I wasn't like, I didn't read anything about them before I found out with these two books. So
Yeah, that's quite interesting because a lot of us don't get like practical philosophy at a young age. And I've actually taught ethics to like really young kids. And it's just such a natural response, like to things about, you know, right and wrong, justice. They've just got a real intuitive response. So yeah, it's kind of a shame that we don't hear about practical philosophy much earlier. And then by the time we get it as adults, it's a real struggle for some of us because we've learned all these habits and
yeah, I think also because well, at school you learn philosophy in a very technical and academical way, right? So it's like every time you tell someone like I'm into philosophy or I am interested in this, they think about like, oh, how boring, like this is reading books and that's it, you know. Like if you're not if you don't understand philosophy as something that like for me everyone is a philosopher. You know, like when someone thinks on philosophy as an academical thing that is useless, I try to explain to them like, you are interested in learning, like you want to explore the world, right? So you are a philosopher. So sorry, you know. So yeah, so I think also Stoicism helps understanding that philosophy is something for daily life, for people that will help, that will understand you, and that is not just a bunch of dates and a bunch of names that you have to memorize as, you know, sometimes they teach us in school, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and with Stoicism, I find that it's not something you can just read a book, learn, take notes, like memorize. You have to really work every day. Like it's so easy to forget, you know, something that you learn in Epictetus or whatever, if you don't practice it every day in whatever form, like maybe doing a reading every day, or I do a bit of writing. I find it's not something that you learn and that's it. You got to keep going back to it. Yeah, like going to the gym. You don't just learn how to build muscles. You just have to keep going back.
Yeah.
You know, you've said so much already, and two things. One of them is how the philosophy's helped you as a person in your daily life, also to deal with certain anxieties or whatever that you might have had, which is what happens to us. And then the other thing is this interrogation of how to use the philosophy in your work, in your design. And that blows my mind, because when I learnt about you and read your CV and thinking you did a master's in communication design and Stoicism, like what does that even mean or look like? So if you could take me through that, like, I mean, I asked you a bit about what you do, but still like design and all that is really a foreign concept to me. So how does then that work with a philosophy, and in this instance with Stoicism? So tell us about your degree first of all, and the Stoicable, which is like blows me. Yeah. So anyway, tell me. I'll just like
So I think that was so that mixing between Stoicism or any philosophy and creativity, more like design and communication design, this kind of more visual part. It was even difficult for me to explain, for me to understand at that point, you know, when I was doing this. And of course, for everyone else, like the teachers and you know, everyone who was asking me at that point, what is your symposium about? But and at the beginning it was very challenging because so for me I think so for me the visual world is not just aesthetic, right? It's just and I think for a lot of people it's a way to communicate, and it's a very ancient way to communicate. It's like that's how you know, how things were communicated to the people on medieval times through the, you know, the colorful glasses in the churches, or or through statues or paintings. So there's a lot of symbols in the visual work. So I wanted to and this, I think this is very accessible to people. And the main challenge was to avoid that idea that by showing you an image of something, you don't want to read the book anymore, because at the end of the day, the book is the important thing. That's what we have to do, right? Like read Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, or or the Plato's Republic, or wherever you want to read, and to get more self-understanding. So that was a very difficult part for me. But what I try is to be able to help users or people understand better that philosophy, and specifically Stoicism, can help them through visual communication. And I tried a lot of different things. At the beginning, it was just brochures, like flyers for the tube in London, in where you got an explanation, a Stoic explanation on how to exercise if you have a everyday problem on the tube. The tube is a very annoying place sometimes, right? Like you got delays, and there's people rushing, and there's a lot of situations that make people angry. And also it can be at the beginning of the day, so then you start the day on an angry way. So I had these flyers explaining in a very familiar way that if the tube is delayed, then take that opportunity to exercise calm and to be with yourself for a little bit. Or this kind of small messages with an infographic. So that was one of the first approach.
Can I just interrupt you there for a second? So those brochures, were they like little cards, or what? And then people would find them where? Near the tickets at the tube, or where would they find them?
Yeah, well, I didn't went that far. Like I just designed them. I didn't try to get. But yeah, I think if let's imagine we put this in practice. I think a good place to have that is wherever the newspapers are, or some place where people take things.
Wow, that's blown me away. I was even thinking you could because I've heard about people writing little stories or little booklets and just leaving them on the seats in the tube, or so I could imagine someone just having those little bits of paper around on seats. And so with the branding, you said there was kind of an image. Was it? Because a lot of the Stoic images that we see are, and on the books and everywhere, they're they use a lot of statues, and kind of very serious looking colors, So what was your brand? What was your images?
Yeah. So this is interesting, because one of the points that I tried to make it familiar to people. So I wanted it to be like carefree and easygoing, and this colorful kind of illustrations with just one plain color or two plain colors. So this was part. So that's the part of the message that is in play on the design, and that help, or what I expected is that helps people engage better with something like this. And so I always try to have a modern style and something more carefree, easygoing, or less classical, right?
Yeah, because we love the idea of this being an ancient philosophy. It does add extra, I don't know, value to the concept today. But we also want something familiar, don't we? We want something that's not too archaic and distant.
Yeah.
That really interests me. And now I'm also thinking, like, how could you, visualize even key concepts in Stoicism, like the dichotomy of control? Like, how would you show that in an image? Would you just choose two colors, or what would you do if you were to?
Yeah, those are these kind of challenges that you have to, like, sit down, think on a lot of ideas, and do a lot of options, iterations, and then eventually, you'll hopefully find something that engages with people and makes understand that concept through colors, shapes, symbols. All of this. But that project was the most, like, the early stage of that idea. So for me, that one was it wasn't successful. I really like it as the beginning of the work that I was doing. But my main concern was that, like, what if people just stays there and they are not, so my aim is to make them interested in philosophy and Stoicism.
Yeah.
So if they just read that and it's like, I don't want it to be a 1, 2, 3 simple steps to reach a very complex thing, right? Like, philosophy is not about giving answers. It's about asking questions to yourself and, finding the answer on your own. So for me, that was too straightforward towards the answer. Like, I was giving the user I wasn't giving them any option to think about that. It was more like this, this is the answer already, right? Yeah. So I don't believe philosophy is like that. Like, it's a path that you have to work on yourself and and understand yourself and see what do you think about love, freedom, whatever, right? So I did a few iterations. At the end, I did these objects, the stackable objects.
What's that?
Yeah. So and again, so this is part of a 2 years path that I had to complete at the second year. But for me, that project, if I had time, I would have kept going and doing more stuff, right? Like and iterating and seeing like more interesting, more complex stuff. But at the end of the day, that was the outcome after 2 years of master, right? So so those objects, they were connected to that idea of the memo, right? Like like having something that will connect the person to the real meaning of that object, right? And the philosophy behind it. So every object came with a packaging and with a storytell. And that story was inspired by an ancient story of a philosopher, like, I don't know, just an example, that one about Diogenes, I don't know in English, Diogenes. And when he saw a kid drinking with hands on the fountain, and then he threw away the only thing that he had, which was like a bucket to drink, right? So, for example, I took that story and made it more like an everyday, nowadays life story, and put it inside that box with the object.
What was the object for that one?
I can't remember right now because there were so many objects and so many stories. I think.
So what sort of objects, like?
What? Yeah, so So I designed, for example, a clock. The clock is one of my favorites because it's a clock without numbers. And it's like the idea of paying attention to every instant.
My God, I love that.
Yeah, so every object had like a Stoic idea tied to the object and tied to a story. So the idea is that when you see that object, you will remember the story, right? Another one was a light, like as a symbol of truth. There was a calendar as a symbol of time and every day, mastering every day, like today is the best moment to start doing, what you want to do. Or there was a lot.
What were the other stories apart from Diogenes? Do you remember any of the other?
Yeah, I mean, they were all, I can't remember, like, this was a long time ago.
Yeah, I know, it was 2013. It was 2013. I'm like, I don't care, I have to ask you because it just fascinates me.
But there were all stories about ancient philosophers.
And you called it stoicable. So, like, you mean something that can be stoic or becoming stoicable.
Yeah.
Bendable, breakable. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, like everything can be stoicable or,
stoicable. Can become stoic, right?
Can become stoic, exactly. Yeah. Kind of, if you have a problem, every person has their own problems and pains. You can apply stoicism and, stoicism will help you with that issue. Yeah.
There's a book by, I'm trying to think, because that is such a great term that you came up with. I think you need to trademark it or something because stoicable, like everything is stoicable. That's such a great brand name. Okay, no one else is taking that name. It's Rocio's. You need to trademark it. I think it's really great. Yeah. So that was your master's project. Objects with stories that would promote. So basically the idea is then that you see the object and then you connect the Stoic idea to that object. So there's a kind of a paying attention and an interaction and a thought process, even a kind of a memorization because the object symbolizes the teaching. Is that right?
Exactly. And this is so this part of the project, the Stoicable, I got a lot of help and inspiration by Donald Robertson.
Yeah.
He was the one who inspired me that idea of the memos and the connecting the stories with icons. So every object will have an icon that represents that idea, right? And now that I remember, there's also because I keep forgetting stuff because it was a long time ago. But every icon was an ancient coin. You know how the ancient coins they have these animals that represent like values of the Roman Empire. Like courage or a virtue,
wisdom. Is it
wisdom? Yeah. So for example, like there was one object which was an eagle, and that was a keychain. As the eagle is kind of the protector so it's kind of the protector. You are the protector of your own house. You are the protector of your own self. Those icons were related to concepts. So again, that part, the idea is to be able to do these memos, these visual memos. So people, or it's, I don't know if everyone is like this, but there's something in images that helps you remember better the ideas. I don't know if everyone if this is something for everyone, but there's a lot of people who will think this way, right? With images. So
I think so. And it just reminded me of I'm not sure if it's just Ryan Holiday, but the Daily Stoic, the website. doesn't Ryan Holiday sell little like memento mori coins, or
Yeah.
And I think I've met a couple of people that have bought those coins and keep them in their pocket, or just you touch it every now and then just to remember. Well, to do the memento mori. So I think there's a lot to be said about objects.
Yeah, exactly.
And even like what you've kind of inspired me to even create my own little mementos, like that idea of the clock with no numbers on it. That's amazing.
Yeah, I remember there was a philosopher, I think it was Montaigne, who had on his wall, not on the wall, on the ceiling, he had some quotes and phrases in Latin and Greek kept on the ceiling. So when he put his chair like that, he would see it every day. So it's like also this kind of idea of the daily reminder of some maxim that you want to hold on your life.
That's quite interesting, isn't it? You could create like an entire Stoic house where you just have all these mementos in there.
Yeah.
Or it could be like a retreat where people go, like you could like rent an hour in Rocio's Stoic house, and you spend an hour there. You know how you have workstations and you go and you work at an office? You could have the Stoic version. Yeah. I reckon people would be much more productive in the Stoic version, totally. Right?
I think like right now, so on daily life, we have all these objects, not for Stoicism, but for, things
productivity.
Or things that interest people. Even like, for example, I'll put a very simple example, which is all the Frida Kahlo merchandising, which is an icon of feminism right now, right? And it's everywhere. And you see the Frida Kahlo, and it's not a painter anymore. She is a symbol of feminism, right? So I think there's something on that relation between the image and the concept, and like how people will remember something much more deep by seeing an object. So I think that that was the main idea.
I love that, Rocio. That's brilliant. I don't want to change the subject too quickly in case there's more about this. Is there anything more in the work that you do visually, or even after the MA, that you want to talk about, to share? Because I don't know enough to ask you the question, but I feel there's like so much there.
Yeah, well, I did a bunch of other work in between the flyers and the objects that I think they were interesting, both as a process and also as an object. So, for example, I did an alphabet, like a book which is an alphabet of philosophical quotes. So it's like you have A for anger, and then you have a philosopher saying, something about anger. I think it was Epictetus in this case.
Not Seneca?
Not Seneca. So from A to Z, every concept with an illustration as well. There's a bunch of designs that I did related to philosophy along these years.
Is that one, they're in Spanish, yeah?
Most of them, they are in English, because I did them in the context of working in London. So yeah.
So are they on your website? Because I'm sure everyone will want to go and check them out. Is it all on your website?
Yeah, they are. Okay. The image, I have to renew the website. It's something
Don't we all?
It's it's on my list. But but the images will be on the website.
And with this book, the A to Z book, that's not for sale or anything, is it?
So most of these things are not for sale, only because it's very challenging to organize the production.
Yeah.
because they are very like for the objects, for example, I would love to sell that clock. I think it's such a beautiful object, but
I want one.
but then, you know, it's very difficult because they are like wood objects that, you know, they are like a 4D printing kind of object. So yeah, eventually I'll do it. I just don't find the moment to start doing it. But for the book, the philosophical quotes book, I think it is in blurb right now. So that one,
it is.
Yeah.
Okay, and we can find it on the website. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because I do love that idea of, and it's probably a very beautiful book, like a coffee table book sort of. It's
thing. It's a coffee table book. It's just one page illustration and then one page quote, and you know, everything is very colorful.
Yeah. Did you have to? So, how deep did you get into studying the Stoic philosophy in order to be able to feel confident enough to do the design aspect? Did you spend a lot of time?
I would have liked to spend more time, and at some points I felt like I'm not specialized in this, and maybe you know I'm saying or, you know, communicating things that are not accurate. I feel like I got a lot of help from Donald on this aspect. He helped me through the whole process on the communication design MA. So, you know, I felt confident only because I had him helping me out a lot.
Yeah.
But, you know, if I would have more time, I would have like to read more. And, you know, at some point of my life, I would like to study philosophy, of course, but it's very challenging to do it, to juggle with the job. So, but you know, I try to keep learning, and of course, sometimes when you learn something else about Stoicism, you realize that, you know, whatever theory you had in the past regarding a specific part, it wasn't accurate. And this is one of the main challenges. And I think it's also one of the main challenges in between practical philosophy and academicism, right? Because sometimes it's difficult to simplify things. In philosophy, it's very difficult. So sometimes we're kind of, when we simplify some of the ideas, we are keeping out some important parts. So we need to be doing these decisions, these we need to keep deciding what to keep out without really cropping something essential, and making philosophy more misunderstood, which is that, you know, something that of course we don't is the last thing we want, right? So that was part of the challenge, of course, and
especially with art images.
Yeah, exactly.
But even with words, when you get condensed versions, or even today, like on Twitter and Instagram, there's all the like mini quotes, and they're obviously fantastic, and they're good to, you know, exercise every day and practice Stoicism every day. They're really helpful as reminders, as, you know, moments to pay attention. But they are extractions, aren't they? They're excerpts. And how do you then, I'm just thinking, you have to do that. You know, you have to do that, and your work trying to extracting something to spark that initial attraction or curiosity, that's really important, and it needs a bit of creative judgment, because you can't just give someone like a big fat volume of Stoicism and say, there you go, read that. You need to kind of draw someone in gently. But then how do you show that there needs to be an invitation to keep learning? Because sometimes I think we feel that, okay, I read the mini handbook, I know everything, but how do you then say, hey, this is just an invitation to learn more? And I like what you were saying, like trying to turn it more into a question rather than here's the answer on a bit of paper.
Yeah.
That's a big challenge. Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest challenges, to not oversimplify, and to make sure that, everything that you are simplifying somehow, to make it more friendly to the people. It's just, as you say, an invitation for everyone and for myself, right? Like, for me, it's the same when I'm learning about this. I think I'm the first user of myself, right? So I also want to keep exploring, and I think when I'm designing these objects, I want to remember that this is an invitation, and I want to express that visually. But I don't know if I'm always success, because that's super difficult to do. Although, I think with the objects, with the memo idea, that works. But that was a challenging. That was.
And you come from a really interesting perspective, because you were telling me the other day that you're working in user design and user experience. They're two slightly different things, but that's kind of what you do. So basically you design interfaces like websites and stuff like that, and think about the user experience, right?
Yeah.
So the user experience is how pleasant and easy and clear it's going to be for a user to use the site, right? So I'm just thinking, okay, if you've got stoicism, what is going to, and you need to create a user interface and like really think about user experience in the design to make that user step into the stoicism, whatever it is, website or encyclopedia. What would be how would you approach that project? What would be the concerns? I don't know if that question is interesting.
It is. It's a very good question. I don't really have a straight answer, but that would be a very interesting
I don't have a straight question.
But I think if I have to approach it as a product designer, I would try. What I would try to do is I would try to clean up all the noise that the user gets in order to achieve that information about stoicism, right? So making the life of the user easy, it's a way to do that, right? If the user has to deal with confusing visuals or confusing paths or buttons that will not work properly and will not lead them where they want to be, then they will be frustrated before they reach the aim. So that will be a funnel, right, of a pain point, right, as we say in product design. So I think that I think it would be kind of in an abstract way, because I don't know how it would look visually, right? But in an abstract way, my work would be to clean up the noise so that the user reach the information that they want to reach. They don't get frustrated. They don't get angry before they reach that information. And so regarding this, I just remember that I saw a documentary in where there was this, she was a toy designer, and she was explaining that difficult is fun, right? Like designing something that is not as easy as friendly is fun, which also ties with the idea of stoicism, because what if you do some stoic product and what you do is get people frustrated and then make them learn how to not be frustrated by an interface, which is something that we have this kind of frustrations every day, right? Yeah. So that would be another approach, and it would be also fun.
To create a user interface where frustration is built into it so people can practice Stoic sort of.
That could be an approach.
That's brilliant. I love that.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. That's really interesting, actually.
Yeah, it's like the path becomes the idea and the learning, right?
Yeah. Like the obstacle is the way, the path is the, yeah. Okay, you've blown my mind again. This is just blowing my mind. Okay, what another kind of design question. What does Stoicism today look like? What if you were in charge of branding it and just designing the whole thing, what colors would you use? What language would you use? What where would we see it? I don't know. What would a designer do if you're in charge with rebranding Stoicism, or just, I don't know, what would you?
Yeah, I think I would do different flavors. Maybe I would do 2 or 3 approaches, because you never know what users empathize with until you test it with the people, which is part of the iteration process that is part of the product design and also brand design. But I think for me, there are some elements that are Stoics, and one of them is the yellow color. Yeah, because it's for me it's the color of truth, wisdom. Kind of it shines, right? It's light, but then there's a specific tone for that I don't know how to describe, because yellow can also be warning and can also be careful, like so it would be more like orangey kind of yellow, and then I would say there are, so that in terms of typography, I would choose something that is modern and at the same time remains of the ancient kind of typographies.
Do you know of any font at the moment that you would use? Or?
Yeah, I really like to use.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, for the Stoic projects, I use a lot the Julius Sans. It's a Google font, so it's a free font.
Julius,
I think it's called Julius Sans.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's also another one called Cincel, I think, and Quattrocento.
Oh, yeah.
Quattrocento is another one. These fonts I use them for that, and I mix them with Jill Sans and with more more conventional fonts that will, because if you use 2 fonts that are very weird or strident, then they will not work together. You have to settle down to make something relaxing that will balance the
Do you know I've only used this font on Canva, League Spartan. Do you know League Spartan?
I know the name. I don't know how it looks right now.
Yeah,
I have to see.
I used that when I was doing just like Instagram kind of quotes and stuff, and I kind of thought that looks a bit Stoic to me, but yeah. Okay, so I interrupted you on the font thing. So got colors, so kind of a yellow, but more orangey.
Also, I think the purple color is an interesting one, because it's the color of magic and kind of wisdom. Like the wizards are all purple, right? So so that's an.
And you know what's really interesting about the purple color? Back in the day, Marcus Aurelius and the regal coats were painted with were dyed in purple, and they used to get purple from. Now I've forgotten all the technical language here, but they used to find the purple dye from snails. You know what I'm talking about? Did you ever hear this?
I didn't know this story.
Yeah, so they got purple dye from snails. They extracted it from snails. And Zeno, who's like founded Stoic philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
You know how he had a shipwreck? Well,
Yes.
he was transporting that dye, and I can't even think of the name of the dye now, right? Because I think his dad he was trading that dye. It was a very popular trading item back then. So purple totally is
very
like,
interesting. Yeah, and also I think the historic reason that gives even a more meaningful message. So I really like that.
Yeah. Okay, so yellow and then I like yellow and purple. That's quite interesting. With Julius Sands font. Okay, what else would you add?
I think symbols are also very interesting. No, I like to use lines because they are kind of elegant. But they are also modern. So like kind of these line illustrations, I think that will work very well. And also you get away from the status that you mentioned before.
That. Yeah. And there's a lot of ambiguity with line drawings because it's not clearly modern or it's not placed. It can, you can do you can work between eras almost, like between historical periods. So it could be modern and ancient in the one line drawing. That would be, I like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Do you draw? Do you feel confident drawing? Yeah.
I did fine arts. So so I like drawing and illustrations.
Yeah. Do you think do you know any of the ancient Stoics? Do you think they would have been artists or kind of, Did Marcus Aurelius draw anything? Do we know? I don't know. Do we know if they did anything like that?
I don't really know, but I think, well, everyone draws. I don't know if they would be artists. Every child draw, and then people start doing other stuff and they forget about drawing. But everyone, at some point on their life, they feel relaxed by just doing some doodles in a piece of paper. But back then, because probably because it wasn't as easy as right now to draw in a piece of paper because they didn't have it. I don't know if they use drawing or writing for more important kind of purposes. I think everyone is kind of creative in their own way. But then also back then, like in the ancient Greece, the artist they didn't see it as they see the artist right now. Like the value of the artist, the value of the creativity wasn't the same, right? Like I think Plato was the one who explained that the artist was copying the nature, and because the nature was already, I'm simplifying this a lot, but because the nature was already a kind of shadows and wasn't true, then the artist was doing the copy of the copy. So there was not an interesting value on that. And the artist was someone anonymous. They didn't get the reputation that the artist will have right now. So I think it was a different concept, a completely different concept, although art was everywhere, right? In the ancient Rome and in Greece. But I think the artist was more like an artisan. Like someone who,
like a tradesperson, sort of.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you, and we might talk about this at the conference on Saturday. The idea of that's interesting, the trades person, and then today's artist, which is like this genius, this creative, original thing. They didn't have that concept or it wasn't well developed. But you told me a story about, was it Phidias or?
Yeah, it was Phidias. So I think it was regarding a statue of Zeus.
Yeah.
So he got a trial regarding that statue, and that was the first time in like the first time that we know in history in where was discussed the value of the artist, because he was the argument that he was giving is that he didn't he was using his creativity because no one ever saw Zeus, so he was imagining a face in order to design or to create this statue. So he demonstrated for the first time that the artist is not someone who copies the nature, but someone who creates and who is original, even if they do a face of a person, because that person is Zeus, no one saw it. So he decided a lot of things in order to do that face and not another face. Yeah.
Do you think that, well, first of all, for you, how important, as a designer and as an artist, originality is a big thing, right? We have to be supposedly original, but I'm thinking that it's so hard to be original because, I don't know, whenever I have a great idea, I Google it and then invariably it's out there. Like it's been done in some form and I'm like, okay, that's how unoriginal you are, Kathryn. But I wonder, just tell me a bit about what you feel about originality and whether Stoicism kind of just makes things a bit better, gives us a perspective on what originality means, if it's even achievable, because the Stoics have this idea that, everything's already been done before, kind of the eternal return type thing. So any comments on originality, and also then as yourself as an artist, anxiety about being original, that what will people think about you? Because I think artists, depend on reputation and being seen as original, etc. And then has Stoicism somehow added to the conversation in your head about that?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting topic. And it's true that everything has been already kind of done. And as a creative person, when you try to do something, it's there already.
I know.
So it's a frustration, of course.
Yeah.
But I think everyone is original in the sense that we are all different. And even though there's something, like you have an idea and there's something already there, but it will never be the same as what you do. Because at the end of the day, you're putting your own originality as a human being, and you are already original, right? So it doesn't matter if I try to copy something. I wouldn't, even if I tried to just copy, I wouldn't be able to do exactly the same, right?
Yeah.
Like I would always put a bit of myself there as a creative person. That's what you do, put a little bit of yourself on that idea. And even the Romans, they create a whole culture artistically, and in terms of architecture, and a whole culture that was based on copying, because they copied from ancient Greece and from different places, and then they create this unique culture that we are still amazed nowadays, and we go to the museums to see their beautiful work. So there's always originality, right? Even if it's copying, because they put their part of themselves on that copy, right? And I don't really know how this is tied to Stoicism. It's difficult because I don't know if Stoics talked about these kind of things a lot. but they were culturally, they were part of the Roman Empire. So I assume they had that idea on the subconscious, right?
The idea of originality. Yeah. Yeah, I'm now trying to think, what did they think about each human being, the originality or the uniqueness of each human being? I think, that's something I need to go and do some homework on, actually.
Well, they talk about being in accordance with your own nature. So it's kind of being yourself, right? Like doing everything is in your hand to be the most you can be of you, right? So I guess that's
interesting.
Part of,
I hadn't really thought about it that way, but that kind of makes sense, just to really kind of comprehend and examine what your nature is, because everyone's got different, I don't know, talents, or things are kind of easier for different. Someone is very clearly more athletic, someone is very clearly more, so maybe it is a matter of paying attention to what it is that you were born to do, what comes naturally, and maybe that's where your uniqueness is. And if you do that well, then that's where your originality is.
And that's part of that main idea of philosophy of self-exploring, knowing yourself, like really understanding who you are. That's what it's all about, right?
I like that. Self-examination, even towards, so what's my creative impact going to be, has to be related to who you are.
Like being authentic.
Being authentic. Yeah. Well, that's quite interesting, because I've been reading, Elizabeth Gilbert, and she's written a book called Big Magic, which is all about creativity, and she interrogates the idea, the ancient the romantic idea that the romantic poets had to really suffer and do something almost godlike, to be almost like immortal. That's where pure art comes from, almost touching the gods in a way. And she talks a lot about the idea that, there is nothing original, but your voice, if you sort of create something or write something or paint something that really comes from just you, then that is authentic. So I think there's a celebration now more of the authentic rather than genius and originality. Yeah, which is interesting.
Totally.
I wanted to ask you about just a couple of questions about, your personal, issues and problems with maybe your creativity or just life in general. And then how did, Stoicism or any other life philosophy, how did that help you just function and create and be the successful person that you are? Because I'm loving your CV. It's really impressive.
Thank you.
And of course, you're not just your CV, but
So, well, for me, philosophy, I understand philosophy as a lifesaver. Like it's just fundamental. Like it's not something that I could live without. And I think that that it's because, so that goes back to when I was a little children. So when I was 10 years old, I was epileptic. And then that didn't happen anymore. So from when I was 10 to when I was 13. And that is very traumatic for a little kid. So it's kind of, I didn't understood very well what was happening. And also I think, so the experiences itself of the epilepsy, it's like it changed your mind, right? The way you perceive reality, because there's a moment that you are not on control of anything, right? And also, well, on my personal experience, so my mom and dad, they work a lot, so they didn't realize I was epileptic until 1 year later. So so I was so then I think that was what changed me, of course, because that's something that will change anyone, right? So when I was a teenager, I started perceiving life I think I was afraid of the epilepsy all the time. And I had to beat that. And also I think I kind of understood reality on a very particular way. It was weird. I don't know how to explain, but I started being interested in, like, the meaning of life and what I have under my control, and what is all of this about. I had a lot of questions, and I think also, so one of the things of Stoicism is that it helped me beating that fear, because I've been having the fear that I'm going to become epileptic again. Like, this is something that you don't know, right? I go to the doctors and they say, you seem to be okay. Or sometimes they say, hey, like, take these pills because you're not that okay right now. You may have a crisis. And so there has been like different moments. And for sure, philosophy was my lifesaver on all of this process. And specifically, Stoicism helped me beating that adversity of being afraid of having epilepsy. And in particular, so I think one of the most traumatic things is that it happened to me on the school with people in front of me, right? So that is hard for a little kid, right? So even in the symposium, one of the main fears was that, like, I'm too nervous, I'm going to trigger that, and this is going to happen to me, right? So Stoicism helped me being in calm, understanding that is something that is not on my control. So if it happens, then I have to learn from that. And
how did you? Which part of Stoicism, like, what were you reading something? Were you telling yourself? How did you do it?
Yeah, I think I tried to remember maxims, like ideas, like repeating it to myself, like, if this happens, then that is not something that you have on your control. But if it doesn't happen, you need to be calm, and you need to show to yourself that this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity for you to remain calm and to beat the adversities. Like, take it. I think when I took it as an opportunity, that was very powerful. That was like, well, I'm not going to have this moment in where I have to talk in front of a lot of people, I didn't talk in front of a lot of people a lot of times in my life. So those moments were like, when I thought of it as an opportunity to remain calm and to teach myself what you can control and what you cannot control, that was very powerful and gave me the strength to be able to. Yeah, but I think in general, philosophy was the something that helped me understand what was the world about. Like, what is this? What is life? What am I? What am I when I'm on that situation? When I was a little kid, when I was on the crisis, what was I, right? So
can the epilepsy return at any time?
It depends on,
theoretically.
So I have been talking to a lot of doctors, and no one say to me it will not return, right? They don't know. It's very difficult. They don't have enough information. But I think I'm not afraid anymore, and that's philosophy helping me out. So yeah.
But it's so funny to feel like just how you reframed it. Like reframing is a big thing in Stoicism, right? It's just like just shifting the way you perceive something. And it seems so like basic, like choose a different word, opportunity instead of fear, right? But what happens in your psyche is amazing. Like it's really transformational, isn't it? And even just how you said that once I started seeing it as an opportunity, that changed everything.
Yeah. And I think it's also a matter of, because at the beginning it was just intellectual, like just me remembering on my brain, right? But then it become a part of me, right? So when it's inside you, and you are not kind of, let's say, forcing it. It's not forcing it, but there's a transformation when it becomes from just intellectual to essential to how, who you are.
Have you noticed, because I've also noticed that gradual shift from intellectually getting something to then it becoming, faster, for example, to think that way, and then almost like the default setting. How do you think that transformation happens? Is it just a matter of repeating every day? Is it a matter of practicing being in those situations? It is it? How would you notice that transformation?
Yeah, I think practice is one of the main things, and also believing that can transform you. I think. If you have to believe that. You have to believe, If you don't think that is useful, then it doesn't matter how many times you repeat it.
You have to make a commitment that it's gonna work for you.
Exactly.
Okay, I got one last question for you, just a fun one.
Okay.
If you were to hire one of the ancient philosophers, the Stoics, to work with you on a Stoic branding project, who would you want to work with?
Well, that's a very interesting question. It's very difficult to decide.
You can have a team.
I think Marcus Aurelius is my favorite. Well, also I feel understood by him. When I read the meditations, that is so inspiring. And I guess also because he was so involved socially in so many things. Of course, he was an emperor, right? That shows, of course, a lot of commitment, and he really wanted to change things, right? So he tried to apply his wisdom and knowledge into every practical part of his life. So I think that's, it's really all of them did that, right? But I guess Marcus Aurelius, because he was on the power position, because he was an emperor, then he was able to change more things, obviously, because because he was a powerful man. And also I think it must have been so challenging for him, right? Imagine how many pressures he got, and he stayed himself, right? He was authentic.
Yeah, he was. If you were on the team with Marcus Aurelius, who would be the leader, you or him?
Oh, him. For sure. I think he's a great leader.
He's a great leader. Right. Oh, that was great, I feel. I love that conversation. I know that I'm going to have to let you go, even though, well, actually, I get to speak to you next week anyway. So that's
I'm looking forward to it.
It's going to be great. It's going to be really great. There's so much to talk about. Well, thank you so much for taking time out on this brilliant sunny day. I'll let you get back to your garden and the dogs. And And yeah, you've really blown my mind. Thank you for that insight. And
No,
I hope we get,
thank you.
we'll definitely have to talk again, because there are so many aspects of applying Stoicism that just makes the conversation so much more interesting for me. And so, yeah, thanks for that. And,
thank you.
And I'll see you Saturday. And yeah, have a lovely day. Thank you so much.
You too.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.